Look, let's have a look at Queensland now. An exclusive in The Australian today reveals that Steve Miles was installed as Queensland's next Labor Premier because of a secret industrial deal done between two unions over government-funded infrastructure projects. The report says that both the United Workers Union and the Australian Workers Union were involved in king-making decisions, according to sources briefed on the negotiations. Miles today denied having any role in Anastasia Palaszczuk's resignation. He held a press conference. He was quite fiery when he was asked about the role of the unions. He said that unions are simply the bodies representing tens of thousands of workers. Steve, what do you think about these reports in The Australian about the way he came to power?
Well, I love the way Jonathan Lee stuck it to him today too. He was very uncomfortable. I don't think Steven Miles is going to handle the media particularly well, particularly when they're a bit aggressive. He's clearly done a deal with the unions and he's been caught out, and now the details have emerged of exactly what that'll do. And it's modelled on what Daniel Andrews did with the Victorian government, where he would do deals with the unions, and all of these big infrastructure projects that you see in Victoria and in Queensland now, they're going to be manned by union workers who are going to get really well paid. And so the unions are looking after their union members and they're using governments to help them do it. I don't think it's a great start for Steven Miles. I think Queenslanders who were sick of Anastasia Palaszczuk are going to wake up pretty quickly to this bloke.
Now, another big story today, Senator Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price has accused Albanese of ignoring Indigenous issues ever since his Voice to Parliament referendum failed. She said that we haven't heard from him since the failing of the Voice on any issues regarding Indigenous Australians, our most marginalised. She says it's disappointing that the Prime Minister appears to have abandoned this issue altogether. Steve, what do you think about this? She does seem to have a point.
I think she's the most honest politician in the country at the moment. She says what she believes. She's not afraid to speak out, and she makes a lot of sense. We know that Anthony Albanese, he did one jet stop, whistle stops tour to Alice Springs at the height of all the trouble they were having in the streets. Now, if any Australians watching us tonight don't believe that that trouble still goes on in Alice Springs, you're kidding yourselves. And so Jacinta is putting on the record again that nothing's happened. And it's not just Anthony Albanese. Sharri, when was the last time we heard from any of the vocal Indigenous leaders who were out every day during the Voice campaign about anything? We haven't heard anything from a peep from them either. So suddenly you lose the yes vote, and you're pretending that all these problems for Indigenous communities, and look at what's going on in Townsville as an example, you're just pretending they've all gone away. I mean, it's pretty pathetic, and the Prime Minister needs, the next time he has a media conference, to be asked about her comments today.
Look, just finally, Steve, what do you think about this prospect that a lot of the political commentators are writing about, that the Prime Minister might be a one-term government, that if they win next time, they could be in minority government, but even that they say it's looking like he could just be a one-term government? There have been so many scandals in the second half of this year.
Yeah, I think Paul Kelly summed that up pretty well in The Australian today, where he said there's a lot of these marginal electorates that are getting very cranky. Now, the last thing we want to do is go back to minority government. I mean, I can still remember how horrible it was in 2010 when Julia Gillard tied with the coalition on 72 seats each. And you remember those days? You might have even been down in Canberra, where you had all those negotiations with Rob Oakeshott and with Tony Windsor and with Bob Katter to try and form some sort of cobbled together government. Can you imagine that happening again after the election we'll probably have in 2025 with the Teals and the government and the Greens? You imagine what sort of Australia we're going to end up with if that happens?
Well, exactly. And Steve, I mean, the Greens were a radical left group back then, 10 years ago, but now they're an anti-Semitic party, undoubtedly. They are an extremist party. You can't possibly form any sort of sensible government with the Greens.
No, you can't, and they'd have to. That's the only way that they could get the numbers if you go into minority government. So, look, in a sense, you'd rather that Labor won in its own right than have to go back to that sort of horse trading. Let's hope that doesn't happen. But if Peter Dutton keeps his nerve, you never know. Anthony Albanese might be a one-term Prime Minister.
All right, Steve Price, thank you so much for your time.